What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be more of a random video in that I'm going to give you a little bit of I don't want to say a purchase guide, but my thoughts on choosing a CPU cooler. Currently right now in the market, 10 core, 12 core, 16 core CPUs are becoming more popular with the 10th-gen Intel chips and the new AMD Ryzen chips that have 12, 16, 24 cores depending on which model you choose. In these processors, as you get more cores in them, they tend to run a little bit hotter, so you may need to upgrade your cooler, especially if you're doing any overclocking. So these are pretty power hungry, and the AMD chips are a little bit warmer when it comes to when they are running than the Intel. But previously, for my purchase experience, I've usually done air coolers. Any Noctua air cooler is going to be able to handle those, but I actually recently switched to a liquid cooler, mainly to get a little bit more performance out of the system, and I like the cleaner look of them. So originally I went with the Be Quiet. I really like Be Quiet's products. I have their case, so I thought I'd give their cooler a shot because it was reasonably priced. And it looked good. It wasn't RGB. I do not want RGB in my system anymore. That's something I'm kind of going away from. So I went with the Pure Loop, the 360 millimeter cooler. And I originally thought that was a great idea. I'd mount it in the front of the case, but I ran into a few problems with that and actually downgraded to the 280 millimeter Be Quiet Pure Loop cooler. I'm going to kind of go over why I think 280 millimeters, or actually 280, I wouldn't even go with 240, I think makes a better all-in-one liquid cooler than a 360. So this actually had to be mounted in the front. It may have been different, I would have mounted it on the top, but it had 320 millimeter fans, and this is where my first problem came into account, in that the fans, while they were really nice, they actually were PWM fans with set RPM at 2000. And that may not sound like a lot, but most general fans, especially quiet performance-oriented ones, are around 12 to 1500 RPMs when you get to the 140 millimeter fan size. So this thing was so loud, especially when you push the CPU. And the thing I found is that it just was too loud for my taste. I just couldn't deal with how loud it was. Again, it may be a little different. It was mounted in the top, but I don't think so, because the 280 millimeter Radiator I have in there right now actually is much quieter. Granted, I have Noctua fans in it. I have the Noctua Redux, the 1500 RPM fans, which are way quieter than any of the Be Quiet fans. I've used 2 or 3 different varieties of the Be Quiet, different fan sizes. They're all, in my opinion, a little too loud. So the other issue I ran into when I was doing this large of a radiator in the front is that the GPU actually got really warm. It was getting 82 to 85 degrees, which typically it runs around 70 to 72. Even when it's 4K gaming or video editing, it runs at that speed or lower generally before I put this in. So I would not recommend doing a front mount radiator for that purposes. My GPU is a 980 Ti, and it's about on its last leg, so I'm trying to get as much life out of it as I can and keep it as cool as possible, because finding a GPU right now is near impossible to find. So I actually downgraded to the 280 millimeter, and I mounted it in the front because I had to. It would not fit in the top of my system. And with the Noctua 140 millimeter Redux fans, it runs much cooler, much quieter. The CPU idles around 25 degrees, and the max I could get it was about 68, which is well within reason when it comes to the CPU temperature. I have it overclocked at 4.9 gigahertz, which I could probably clock it higher, but I don't need to, so I just leave it at that. And the GPU, again, it's back down to its 70, 72 at max temperature, so I'm really happy with that. So this is why I would recommend not getting a 360 millimeter radiator, especially if you're worried about the noise. That was my biggest annoyance, was just how loud the fans were, which you probably could get around by putting some Noctua fans, but it's also going to cost you more, because then you're putting 3 fans in there. And you look at the diameter difference between a 280 and a 360 millimeter CPU cooler, it's not that much difference when it comes to square footage of how much cooling surface you actually have. So that's it. This is kind of a random rant video, but I would strongly recommend going to a 280 millimeter radiator if you're looking to go to the liquid cooling side of things. I really like the Be Quiet ones. I bought the same one mainly because I didn't want RGB. Be Quiet is known to have pretty good build quality with most of their stuff and reliability, so I went with that. And you can refill these, so you can drain the fluid out and refill them. So hopefully they should have a little bit more longevity than some of the other ones out there, because you can drain your fluid out or you can top it off because the fluid will kind of dissipate as it goes. So that's it. Again, I'm not an expert on CPU coolers. Check out some of the more popular YouTube channels out there for that, but that's my opinion. That's what I'd recommend. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. I will get a more long-term review of these coolers as I use them, but both of them are great. I just like the 208 millimeters a little bit quieter, and I already had 140 millimeter Noctua fans laying around, so I went with that, and that's just my overall general experience. So that's it. Have a good rest of the weekend. Be safe out there, and I'll see you guys next time.